Hey fellow glitchers, this is an interesting glitch. It causes every move of the Hitbox to connect with any beetle in a certain glitch state, no matter where they are. Your fighter will act the same as they would when they're attacking an opponent, except there's no one around for miles. They just look like they're beating up the air. This abnormality has some side effects that can be useful, and some that are just plain annoying. The cause for this glitch has something to do with a POW block and, I'm assuming, its ability to hit anyone on the ground no matter how far away they are. As you can see, after throwing POW blocks around and destroying all the beetles, some beetles may appear that shake when any hitbox is active on the screen, such as when I attack. This method right here is very unreliable, and although it works often, it isn't the best we can do. After messing around, I found a way to get the glitch to happen in training mode. You have to throw a POW block up in the air, and when it starts going down, spawn a beetle. The beetle should be damaged arbitrarily in midair, then again when the POW hits the ground, which will destroy it. What we wanted was to destroy the beetle in one fell swoop, which was tricky because the beetle takes 2 hits from the POW to get destroyed. I really don't understand why the beetle gets hit by the POW while it's in the air, or why the timing is precise as it is. After using this method for a while, I found out that you can simply destroy a POW block to glitch a beetle. The number of POW blocks you destroy determines the number of glitched beetles, so I'd recommend always destroying 8 of them. While the beetle is on the ground, it can get destroyed and disappear, which isn't what we want. If the beetle is in the air, however, it can take any amount of damage without disappearing, because it only explodes when it hits the ground. So, if you push it over the edge and then use a move with the vertical wind bots, the beetle will fly upwards. It's helpful to use the move a couple times to make sure it stays up there. With Greninja's taunt, the beetle will usually stay in the air for about a minute. I like using Greninja for this because the taunt is just one button on the D-pad and is easier to use than a direction on the analog stick. Also, Greninja is one of the few characters that can infinite jump with this glitch by using down air. Other characters with vertical wind boxes include Game & Watch with down tilt and Meta Man with up air. Any wind box that isn't strictly vertical will mess this glitch up. Ganondorf's up tilt, Villager's watering can, and even Greninja's uppy all fall into this category. But other than non-vertical wind boxes, no move will be able to cancel this glitch no matter how powerful it is. That being said, a lot of funny things can happen with this, as you might imagine. So now, we go over them. A lot of moves will end short, such as Pit's upper dash and Captain Falcon's Raptor boost. Since these moves only come out upon making contact, they become very useless when they only travel a few inches. But it can also cause these characters to infinite jump because of the height they gain when using it in the air. Most projectiles will just disappear the frame they come out, which is kinda lame. Nessa's PK Thunder is pretty awful for recovery with this glitch. It'll usually disappear before you can launch yourself, and even if you do, the distance will be reduced. DDD's Gordo will jump in the air, which looks pretty funny. I know the Landmaster's lasers weren't super helpful before, but now they're utterly useless. Wii Fit Trainer's soccer ball will end up going backwards instead of forward. Olimar is a mysterious case. When he throws his Pitmen, they teleport to the beetle, but then they just disappear. I think they might be too high up. Duchan's case may seem pretty bad, but it actually provides for a pretty good infinite jump. Until you reach the upper blast zone, that is. The same goes for Meta Man's Crash Bomber if you pair it with your uppy. Using rapid jabs is pretty entertaining because it goes so slow. Also, you don't seem to move backwards, even when attacking a natural fighter, so it's harder for them to escape. Multi-hit uppies are also slow, but are mostly annoying, especially when trying to recover. Lucas is probably the best of these ones. If you've ever had trouble landing a sweet spot on certain moves, then this is the glitch for you. You'll be delivering the knee of justice every time, guaranteed. And also some other moves like Zelda's lightning kick. There are a couple more infinite jumps that we haven't yet covered. We have Greninja's down air, Pit and Dark Pit's side Bs, Duchan's tan, and Meta Man's Crash Bomber, but I didn't mention Peach's side B and Villager's Lloyd Rocket. Bayonetta's neutral air lets her hover for a lot longer than usual, but it's not infinite. There are a few notable assist trophies in Pokemon, which are also affected by this glitch. Some of them are pretty much rendered useless. Most items behave how you'd expect. The projectiles do nil, and all the bombs backfire. But some items almost made me laugh. The hammer goes a lot slower and freezes up every second. The bumper is a loud mess, and the blue shell just gives up. Let's not forget the stages that also have some hitboxes, with hazards and all. Most of the stages have the average stage hazard, which will cause the screen to shake a little, and it's mostly been there done that. Although it is pretty cool to see where you can get hit in moving stages like Mario Kart 8. Stage bosses aren't really interesting, except for Ridley, whose fire disappears instantly. And the bomb on Halberd's deck will blow up as soon as it leaves the cannon, which means that the Beetle's hitbox goes beyond the SY plane. The Tarzan on net will get hit and start spinning. Either that, or these are just some bad drivers. Now, these are just average stage hazards, but there are so many of them and the stage is so big that the shaking gets hilarious. Great Cave Offensive has been notorious for being so big, and when there are fighters on all corners of the map, it can be impossible to see where you are. Well, I think I just found the solution to the problem. This also works for Palutena's Temple and is almost just as effective. You can even pull off the speed glitch for even better results. Also, make sure you scatter the beetles so they don't all get hit at the same time. And finally, the pinnacle of this glitch, Windy Hill Zone. Words can't describe the ostentatiousness of this divertisement. It's truly a spectacular thing. While I was messing around with the technical side of stuff, I discovered that this glitch is a lot more complicated than it seems. I wanted to know how to deactivate a beetle once it was glitched, and found that when there was one glitched beetle, I could deactivate it by throwing it. Simple enough. So, I glitched 8 beetles and threw all of them. But only 2 were deactivated. What I'm trying to say is, this gets so complicated that it took me a week to figure out part of what was going on. So if you're not into all the figuring out which beetles will be deactivated when a certain combination of beetles are thrown, and why the output seems to be flipped, and how suddenly everything seems to be shifting to the right and all that, and you just came for the flying ninjas, then now's your cue to leave, because this next part is going to be rough. After throwing 8 beetles and finding only 2 of them deactivated, I tried throwing different combinations of them and got a bunch of odd results. It seemed like some kind of code. I systematically tried some combinations of 4 and visualized the results to see if I could make out a pattern, but it was just a bunch of gibberish. Aside from what appeared to be consistent groups of 2. I knew if I wanted to get anywhere, I was going to have to collect a lot more data. So, I started going through every possible combination for when you deactivate 1, 2, and 3 beetles, and then I decided to go all the way through 8. The total number of combinations was a whopping 255, and testing them all took a solid 7.5 hours, at just under 2 minutes a trial. And that doesn't include the times that I accidentally messed up. While I was testing, I found out that at least one deactivated beetle will hold the spot correlating to the number of beetles you threw. I laid out each input under their respective output and looked for any patterns. Again, I saw the groups of 2, but this time I knew they had to mean something. After staring at the chart for a long time, I decided to break down each column into its basic building blocks, or its lowest common denominator if you will. But after doing that, there was still something missing. There weren't enough patterns among the LCDs to decipher anything. But then I realized that I had to break all of the parts 3 pixels or longer into components of 1 and 2 to make everything fit together. I noticed how everything progressed to the right, and decided to bunch up all the LCDs for a closer look. I was having a hard time seeing the pairs of pixels, until I highlighted them, and that brought to my attention how the number of deactivated beetles correlated to the number of pairs in any given group. But it still seemed so vague. After once again staring at a screen with little hope as to whether or not I would solve the puzzle, the answer struck me like a leaf. Each pair was like a stop. Whenever the game hit one, it would deactivate a beetle and move on. I tested that theory for all of them and it held true. The only problem is this algorithm doesn't work on the original inputs, so we're gonna have to be a little more specific. If you marked every input so they match the pairs of pixels at the top of each column, you'll notice that every pair is at the right side of a line or by itself. It's never on the left. Also, a row never starts out with a pair. Now we need to come up with a simple formula that sums up these rules and can be used to predict an output given any input. Okay, start on the first beetle and move right 1 beetle at a time, counting up from 1. When the next set of beetles is 2 in a row and the space after that is not a beetle, then place an output on your current number. I think that'll do. It probably sounds more complicated than it is. It's just tricky to put into words. Okay, there are a couple different things I should go over about the way the game numbers the beetles, and the side effects of how many you put out and things like that. I'm not sure exactly what the coding says about everything, but for convenience, I'm calling the first beetle you put out 1, the next 2, and so on. Obvious, right? Well, the formula we just used seems to work backwards, starting at 8 and ending at 1. This isn't too bad if we were always using 8 beetles when determining the output. But what if we use 5? What if we glitch 8 beetles, but only spawn 5 and throw the first one? As it turns out, that actually does matter. In the scenario I just illustrated, after resetting and spawning 8 beetles, only beetle number 5 will be deactivated, which is the number of beetles we spawned. This holds true for any number of beetles we spawn, if we just throw the first one. The question is, what on earth is happening? We definitely solved some code, but maybe we haven't solved everything. Well, after testing the same input for different numbers of spawned beetles, everything seemed to slowly shift to the right. I thought this might impact our formula, but I think the shifting has no other consequence than what it is. Things moving a little in one direction. But there is one thing I noticed when testing this. I'd like you to meet my friend, the guy you all know and love and possibly not love, Zero. That's right, as it turns out, even the pairs of beetles at the start of the input are counted. You just can't see the result because it's out of our scope. I guess you could say the 0th beetle exists, and assuming the game does count down from 8 when determining the output, that would mean the 9th beetle gets deactivated. But I don't think that's really what's happening because we never glitched the 9th beetle to begin with. Alright, are you ready for things to get complicated? Everything we've done involved 8 beetles being glitched. We know that the combination of POWs being destroyed doesn't matter, it's just a number of them that's counted. And the beetles are activated from 1 to 8. So what if we activate less than 8 beetles? Well, when it comes to our formula, deactivated beetles make things a lot more confusing and specific. Instead of just glitched beetles we have to deal with, we now have a mixture of both activated and deactivated beetles. And the deactivated beetles can act very strangely when they're thrown. Admittedly, I wasn't able to come up with what felt like a super solid formula for this, but then again, the amount of possibilities for this is exponentially greater than before because you would have to try every combination of thrown beetles on every combination of deactivated beetles. If we do the math, that's 255 times 255, or 65,025 possibilities. Assuming each trial took 3 minutes because of the extra time to set it up, it would take almost 4.5 months non-stop to collect all the data. Now obviously it wouldn't take 65,000 results to come to a sound conclusion. In fact, with only about 80 trials, I found a formula that works for pretty much every single output we have, including the original 255. Line up the beetles from 1 to 8, left to right. Keeping them in order and in their respective groups, put all the thrown beetles on the left, with the rest of them on the right. Find any deactivated beetle that's one place away from the right edge of its respective group. Of those beetles, take the leftmost one, and, if there's a beetle 2 places to the left of it, mark it as glitched. Then, deactivate the beetle 2 places to the left of it, if it's not already deactivated. Disregarding any deactivated beetles, deactivate any beetle to the left of the last 2 beetles of any group, whether it's in the same group or not. Find the rightmost glitched beetles within the thrown beetles, and deactivate it. Finally, flip the set of all spawned beetles to get the output. So yeah, I figured out that, upon resetting training mode, the game will flip the beetles you had spawned, which explains why the output was backwards, and why our conveniently symmetrical inputs moved a little in one direction. Also, that means that the 0th beetle must hitch a ride when the first 7 beetles or less get flipped. I implied that the formula I just stated didn't work for at least a couple of inputs, but I had that for the original formula and the outputs that didn't work turned out to be wrong. Also, I'm pretty sure this formula wouldn't hold up against all 65,000 results anyways. So, let's call this case an overly complicated estimate of the order of something that really doesn't even matter, and we'll call it a day. Wow, I almost forgot the point of this video. Glitches. Speaking of glitches, I like Kirby. Shout out to Cheap Ninja for finding this glitch and Otakuni for sharing it with me. Be sure to check out both of their videos I have linked in the description. And thanks for watching! If you like glitches as much as me, then don't forget to smash that subscribe button. I'll see you later.